There's a place between life and death where duty becomes religion. That was where Corporal Elias Thorne lived. He was hurt. His oxygen recycler made a noise like an old man going upstairs. For 6 days, his left arm hadn't moved. The orbital spire around him was falling apart. Panels were falling into space. Corridors were dark. The cafeteria was frozen solid. And 17 of his fellow soldiers were already dead and floating somewhere in the black. Elias Thorne, on the other hand, was still at his post, still holding the light, still waiting for orders that would never come. And then, on what should have been his last morning alive, the sky outside the spire turned gold. Then it turned purple. Next, white. A light so big and beautiful that even a dying man put his face against a cracked window and whispered, "What in God's name?" The Empress of the Galaxy had come. She wanted her throne back. Elias Thorne, who was broken, bleeding, and as stubborn as the earth itself, was in her way. This isn't a story about war. This story is about being human in a world that doesn't care if you live or die and deciding to matter anyway. There was a name for the spire at one time. The military name for it was Orbital Station Meridian 7, but the soldiers who lived there called it the Old Girl. She was huge. Built 300 years ago when people first went beyond the asteroid belt and started putting up flags in the dark. 7 levels. There are 42 rooms. A rotating observation deck that used to give the best view of the gas giant Kilos, hanging in the distance like a bruised jewel. She was dying now 2 weeks ago. A piece of debris from the Battle of Hector's broke through the observation deck. Ridge punched through the hull like a fist through a piece of paper. Levels 5 through 7 were completely empty of air. The cafeteria was locked because the heating system broke down, and everything inside, food, equipment, and the personal photos that soldiers hang on the walls, had frozen into a cold museum of things that used to matter. Corporal Elias Thorne lived on the 3rd floor. He had moved his cot next to the main beacon console, so he wouldn't have to walk very far. It was hard to walk now. 5 days ago, the wound on his right side, a deep jag cut from shrapnel during the evacuation, had gotten infected. He was aware of it. He could smell it. A doctor had told him to stay still and pray. But Elias wasn't a physician. He was in the army. He got up every 4 hours, checked the beacon's frequency, logged the status report into the system, and then carefully and painfully lowered himself back down. For 23 days, he had been doing this. He was 31 years old. His mother always said his jaw was built for stubbornness. He had brown hair and gray eyes. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow from a fight he had when he was 17. It was a dumb fight over something he couldn't even remember. Back home in Columbus, Ohio, he had a sister named Dana. He had a dog named Pepper that he had left with his neighbor, Mrs. Calloway. He had a letter to his father that he had been trying to write for 6 months on his personal tablet. He had never been able to find the right words. He had 17 brothers and sisters who had died and were either lying somewhere in the spire or floating in the black outside of it, and he had orders to follow. Keep the beacon. Keep the signal going until someone else takes over. The beacon was what made Meridian 7 important. When the Hector's ridge collapsed, the whole eastern military front fell apart, and ships were going in all directions. Meridian 7's beacon became the last navigational anchor in Sector 7. It had helped 14 civilian evacuation ships get to safety. The beacon's signal went 200 million miles in every direction, sending out a clear, steady frequency that said, "Here, I'm here. You are not lost." Any ship within range would lose their navigation lock if the beacon went dark. It wasn't a big deal to lose navigation in deep space. It meant death. Thorne held it. Then on day 4, his relief unit was supposed to show up. Then it was day 8 that then Command stopped talking completely. He knew what that meant. He wasn't stupid. The front had fallen down. Command was probably in a panic, too busy, or even evacuated. He couldn't get any relief because there was no one else to send. He was aware of all of this. He still held the beacon because his orders were still the same, because no one had officially told him to step down. He wasn't going to let the last act of 17 good people die in the spire mean nothing, because a ship might need this signal out there in the dark, could need him. And a soldier didn't leave his post just because things got tough. .1 soldier stayed. The mechanical life support unit, which was a worn-out gray box the size of a small suitcase that he had put together from 3 different systems, hummed on the floor next to his cot. It controlled how much oxygen he got and cleaned the air that was recycled on level 3. And a line taped to the back of his hand slowly dripped antibiotics into his bloodstream. The antibiotics weren't strong enough. He also knew that. They weren't stopping the infection. They were slowing it down. Buy him days instead of saving his life he had, if he was being honest with himself. In the quiet dark of level 3, with only the hum of the beacon for company. Maybe a week. Maybe not as much. Every day, he wrote in his log. No reports. Entry for yourself. Ideas. Day 21. The signal is still strong. The sun's angle makes kilos look orange today. Thought about Pepper. Thought about the trip to go fishing Dad took me in when I was 9. I'm fine. He never wrote about how much it hurt. He never wrote about being scared. He wrote it down because it made it real. And if it did happen, it might stop him. Elias Thorne was going to keep his job, no matter what happened in this universe. He got up for his 4-hour check on day 23. The beacon frequency is stable. Strength of the signal, 91%. He wrote down the report. He wrote down the time. He looked out the window at the quiet blackness of Sector 7. And then he stopped because the black wasn't quiet anymore. It began as light at a single point of gold, so far away that it looked like a new star was forming. Elias leaned in closer to the viewport and squinted. His eyes weren't as good anymore. The infection had given him a low fever that came and went, and when it got really bad, the edges of his vision got blurry. He thought he might be seeing things that weren't there. But then the light got bigger. Gold turning purple. White becoming purple. White turned into something that didn't have a name in any human language. It was a color that didn't exist in any human language. Something between ultraviolet and sound. If sound could be seen, it spread across the industry like a sunrise, and ships started to appear in the middle of it. Not ships like he'd ever seen before. Ships made by people were functional, with sharp angles, gray color, and practicality. It looked like an afterthought to put guns on the outside of military ships. Civilian ships were just boxes with engines inside. If you were being honest, Even the best human-made things looked like they were made quickly by people who cared more about survival than beauty. These ships were not the same. The first one that went through the fold was as big as a city. For real, Elias grew up in Columbus, and this ship, which was long, curved, and shining like a pearl made of starlight, was bigger than downtown Columbus. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something that big, like a leaf on a slow current drifting through the fold point. Patterns that glowed from within covered its hull. These patterns were geometric and moved and breathed like living things. More came after it, a lot, then hundreds more. There were ships of all sizes, from huge flagships to small escorts that moved quickly between the larger ships like fish around a whale. They all shone. They all moved with that same impossible grace. They all had the same glowing insignia on their hulls, which Elias recognized from his military briefings, a crown with 7 points, each one ending in a star. The Valen Dominion's imperial seal. Elias knew about the Valen Dominion in the same way he knew about earthquakes and lightning strikes, as something that happened in the universe that you accepted from a distance and hoped you never had to deal with directly. They were very old, very, very old. Valen, the Empress, had been in charge for 3,000 years. Not 3,000 years with a dynasty, passing the crown down from one generation to the next, with the same person for 3,000 years. The same Empress, not quite immortal, but close enough that it didn't matter. Military analysts had stopped trying to compare her technology to what people could do because it was so much better. It was like comparing a toy boat for kids to a big ship. The difference was too big for the comparison to be useful. The Dominion didn't take over planets by force. They didn't have to. They came, said what they wanted, and every civilization that had ever met them quickly did the math and agreed to those terms. Because the other choice was to watch everything you knew turn to ash in about 40 minutes. There was one standing order in Elias's military briefings about the Valen Dominion that don't get involved. Don't make things worse. Do what you are told right away. Elias watched as the fleet filled the area. Then the panel for his communications lit up. He slowly reached over, gritting his teeth against the pain in his side, and opened the channel. It wasn't a human voice that came through. IT was close. It sounded like a human voice with words, grammar, and language, but there was something underneath it, like a chord played on an instrument made of things that weren't quite matter. Something that made the air in Level 3 feel thicker. This is the Imperial Advance Herald of Her Eternal Majesty, Empress Valen, Sovereign of the Outer Reaches, and Keeper of the 7 Stellar Thrones. The station called Meridian 7 is located in the first stellar throne of the Valen Ancestral Domain, which is part of Imperial territorial space. Her Majesty has come back to take back the seat of power. Everyone is told to leave the station right away. You have 30 minutes to do what you need to do. If you don't follow the rules, the right amount of force will be used. This is the only time you'll be told. Elias stayed very still for a long time. He thought about what the word appropriate meant. He thought about the fleet outside. Hundreds of ships, technology so advanced it might as well be magic, and an empress who was 3,000 years old and had probably never heard the word no in her life. He looked at the console for his beacon. Stable signal. He looked at the machine that kept him alive. Still going. He looked out the window and saw the flagship, a city-sized pearl ship, hanging in the black like a quiet god. Then Elias Thorne leaned forward, opened a line of communication, cleared his throat, and said, "This is Corporal Elias Thorne, United Earth Military Corps, Meridian 7 Station." His voice was rough from 23 days of breathing in recycled air and being sick. "I got your message. I am the only person left on this station. I am currently in this position because I've been given standing orders to keep the navigational beacon running until authorized command personnel officially take over." He stopped. "I haven't gotten any orders for relief. I haven't gotten any orders to stand down. So I can't leave this station right now. I'm sorry for any trouble." No noise, but a long silence. After that, the channel shut down. The 30 minutes went by. Elias did 2 things with them. The first thing was useful. He dragged himself to the engineering panel on the far wall of level 3 and started sending power from the less important systems, like the lights, the leftover power draw from the frozen cafeteria, and the broken heating units on level 6 to the station's other power cells. The power cells were the most important part. They were the emergency system, a last resort measure that could, if triggered, release a burst of electromagnetic energy powerful enough to knock out electronic systems within 50 meters of the station. It wouldn't hurt the Empress's fleet. It wouldn't even leave a mark on it. But it could stop their boarding equipment from working. Give him some time. Make it clear that he wasn't just going to open the airlock and let them in. The second thing was about me. He took his tablet and opened a letter to his father that he hadn't finished yet. He looked at it for a long time. After that, he began to write, "Dad, I don't think I'm going to finish this in person. There's a problem, a large one. I want you to know that I'm fine with how things are. You should know that I was here, I stayed, and I held it. I believe that is important. I hope it makes a difference. Tell Dana that I told her to stop letting her kids stay up late. Please let Mrs. Calloway know that Pepper likes to have his belly scratched on the left side, not the right. And tell yourself, since I know you always blame yourself for everything, that you did a good job, Dad. You taught someone how to see things through." He kept the letter. He set the tablet down. The channel came back on, but this time the voice was different. IT wasn't a herald. It wasn't stiff or formal. It was a voice that sounded tired, and that was what made Elias sit up straighter even though it hurt. Old, not sleepy like someone who needed sleep. Tired like something that had been carrying a lot of weight for so long that it forgot how to put it down. Corporal Thorne. Not a question. A clear and careful statement, as if she were testing the weight of his name. Elias blinked when he heard, "This is Empress Valen." That wasn't what he thought would happen. The Empress herself opened a direct line to a dying corporal on a station that was falling apart. He said Empress because it seemed like the right thing to do. She said, "I have looked over your personnel file. 23 days ago, you were given your orders. On day 6, your command structure fell apart. For 17 days, you have been the only person on this station. You are hurt. Your health is..." She stopped. "Important." "Yes, ma'am. I can end your suffering right now," she said. It wasn't a threat. The tone was the same as when she said any other fact. I can also give you medical care that will save your life. You have to stand down for both of these choices. I get what you mean, Empress. Then stop. Elias said, I can't do that. I haven't gotten any official orders. Another quiet. This one felt different from the first one. Less planned and more something else. Something he couldn't quite put his finger on. She said very carefully, Your command no longer exists. Those people who told you to do that are no longer here. I get it. Then you know that the orders are no good. I don't see it that way, Empress, with all due respect. Elias moved, hissed softly at the pain, and kept his voice steady. I was told to keep this beacon until I'm officially relieved. The orders are still in effect. The beacon is still working. I'm still around. So, as far as I can tell, I'm still working. This time, the silence lasted a very long time. There was something different about her voice when she spoke again. Something that could have been called confusion in a person. Corporal, you're dying. Yes, ma'am. You know this. You know that if you don't get help, you won't live for another 7 days. That sounds about right, yes. And you are choosing to spend those days holding a navigational beacon for a military that no longer exists in a sector that has already been abandoned. Yes, ma'am. Why? Elias thought about it and said, not because he didn't know the answer. He had known it for 23 days. He thought about it because he wanted to say the right things. Because I said I would. He finally said, 17 people died in the station, and they died while on duty. A ship might need this signal out there in the dark. And if I just walk away because things got hard, because it hurts and I'm scared and no one is watching, then what does it all mean? What did they die for? He heard something on the phone. Not words. A little quieter. Nobody's watching, Corporal, she said in a low voice. You're looking, he said. And I'm looking, and that's all. She didn't attack the station. Elias thought she would. After he was done talking, he pulled himself back to the engineering panel and kept his hand close to the power cell trigger. He watched the viewport for the small, fast shapes of boarding craft. His side hurt. That blurring thing was happening to his vision again. He had taken 2 of the 5 painkiller pills he had left and washed them down with recycled water that tasted like metal. He looked. The fleet stayed where it had been 2 hours. Then 3. No boarding ships. No warning shots. No more messages. Just a fleet hanging in the dark like a thought that is waiting. The channel opened up again after that. Corporal Thorne, I want to keep talking to you. Elias almost laughed. She was 3,000 years old and had hundreds of ships behind her. But she wanted to talk. He said, I'm not going anywhere. And right away he saw the dark irony in what he said. Tell me about the people who died here, she said. He wasn't ready for that either. Why? Because you brought them up. You said they died while on duty. I want to know what that means to you, specifically. Elias looked around on level 3. The cots that were empty. He had gathered his personal things and carefully placed them against the far wall. It was a habit, a way to keep things tidy, and something to do with his hands. A picture of Sergeant Linda, Ross's kids, taped to the wall. A small, old book of poems that Private Marcus Webb was reading when the debris hit. A lucky coin that Corporal Jamie Chin had with him since basic training. Linda Ross, he said. Sergeant, 34 years old. She had 2 kids, one 8 years old and one 6 years old. She died on day 2, which closed the gap on level 5, so the rest of us could get to level 3. She didn't have to do it. She could have stepped back. She did not. He stopped, took a deep breath. Marcus Webb, 22, a kid from Georgia, the best cook we had. He somehow made military food taste like real food. On day 5, he died. The ceiling on level 4 fell down. He pushed Thatcher aside. He didn't get out in time. Thatcher? Sam Thatcher, private, 19 years old, passed away on day 9. Elias stopped and said, "The infection got him faster than it got me." He was scared in the end. I took his hand. I told him that the ships with help were on their way. Were they? No. Silence. I knew they weren't coming, Elias said, but Sam had to think they were. So I told him they were, and he got better. He said it was fine, and then he left. Elias's voice was very steady. He had 23 days to put up walls around these memories. Strong walls. 17 people. I can remember all of them. The Empress didn't say anything for a long time. Her voice changed again when she spoke. The old tiredness was still there, but something new had come into it. In a being that had lived for 3,000 years and seen civilizations rise and fall like tides, this could have been the start of grief. This station, she said in a low voice, was built on the ruins of my first stellar throne. The first building stood here for 800 years. It was the seat of my court, a place of power and ceremony. When your people first moved into this area, they built their station on top of its bones without knowing what they were doing. I didn't know that. No, you wouldn't have known. She stopped for a moment. I came here to get it back, to bring it back, to make it what it was again. Another pause. I've been planning this return for more than 100 years. And you found me, Elias said. I found you. The silence between them was different from all the other silences. There was silence between the two people who were really listening to each other. May I ask you something, Empress? You can. Have you ever met anyone who said no in 3,000 years? Elias asked slowly. The pause before she answered was the longest one so far. She said, "No, not like this." "How does it feel?" There was another long pause. "Surprising," she finally said. "Surprisingly, I find that I am..." "Good," Elias said. There was something in his voice that wasn't defiance or aggression, but something warm, tired, and human. "Means you're still learning." That seems like a lot of money after 3,000 years. He heard something else on the line. He still didn't know what it was, but it was there, quiet and unexpected, under the heavy weight of her voice. It could have been laughter, that night, or what passed for night, which was just the dark. Elias made it harder for himself by lowering the level. He dreamed of 3 lights to save energy. He thought about the fishing trip he took when he was 9. Ray Thorne, his father, was big and quiet and smelled like coffee and engine oil. He was sitting in a beat-up aluminum boat on a lake in Tennessee. The water was very calm. The sky was a deep blue. Young Elias was about to cry because his line was all tangled up. He was 9 years old and had the kind of frustration that made him feel like the world was ending. But his father reached over, took the line, and spent 10 minutes patiently working out every knot without saying a single impatient word. Then he gave it back and said, "Eli, things just get tangled sometimes. It doesn't mean they're ruined." Elias woke up in the dark of level 3 with his side on fire and the beacon next to him humming steadily. He looked at the clock. It had been 6 hours since they last talked to each other. He looked at the beacon. Signal. Steady. 89%. He wrote down the report. The channel started an hour later. The Empress said, "You slept?" She talked about it like it was amazing. He said, "Had to." Body insisted. He stopped for a moment. "You don't sleep?" "Not the way you think it is. I go through times when my consciousness is less clear, but I haven't had real sleep in a long time. The way your kind just stop and trust the world to hold you is so vulnerable." Elias said, "Sounds lonely," before he could think about whether that was a good thing to say to a Galactic Empress. A second silence. "It is," she said in a low voice. "It is very lonely." He didn't expect that either. There were a lot of things he didn't expect in this whole thing. "Empress," he said carefully, "I want to ask you something real, and I want you to be honest. Ask." "Your fleet has the technology to disable my power cell trigger before I could even get to it. If you really wanted to, you could take the station in about 30 seconds. He stopped. "So, why are you still out there talking to me?" There was a long pause. "Because," she said slowly, "I think the last time I really fought back was 900 years ago. And that resistance was an army, battleships, fortified planets, and 100,000 soldiers. It took me 4 years and a lot of effort to get over it." She stopped again. "You are one person, one hurt, dying man with a beacon and a power cell trigger. And you have kept my attention for almost 8 hours. And I find," she said, her voice very careful and precise, as if she were carefully choosing each word before saying it, "that I respect you. I haven't said that to a living person in a very long time, maybe forever." Elias was quiet. He finally said, "That's nice of you." "It's not nice. It is a correct evaluation." She stopped. "Corporal Thorne, how much longer do you think you could stay in this job if I gave you real medical care instead of the cheap antibiotics you have access to?" Elias's chest felt different. "Empress, what are you saying?" "I'm asking a question." He thought about it a lot. "My orders say to wait until I'm free," he said slowly. "I've been waiting, but my orders also say to keep the beacon going. The beacon's job is to keep ships safe by helping them find their way. You could set up your own navigation system if you're taking back this base. Better than mine." "Yes," she said, "we could. Technically, the beacon's mission could be considered complete if a better navigation system were in place. That is," she said softly, "a logical way to look at it. That would mean that my orders were being carried out. It would. And a direct order from the ruling sovereign of this base, as seen in the official communication log, would count as official orders. It would. Elias thought about that for a while. Then he asked, "Are you trying to help me leave in a way that is honorable, Empress?" "I am trying," she said very carefully, "to find a way to solve this that honors both of us." Yes, for a long time. He didn't say anything. The fleet was still there, huge and patient, outside the viewport. That flagship, the size of a city, glowed softly in the dark. A lot of ships. A 3,000-year-old empire. Everyone was waiting for one corporal at a station that was falling apart. He finally said, "My name is Elias." Not just corporal. Elias. "I know," she said. "Remember that I read your file?" "Okay." He took a deep breath. Elias Ray Thorne. Columbus, Ohio is where I was born. Raymond and Carol Thorne's son. My dog's name is Pepper. He looks at an unfinished letter to his dad on his tablet. "Yes. I want that letter to go," he said. "Whatever happens, I want that letter sent to Raymond Thorne in Columbus. That's all I want." "Done," she said right away. No second thoughts. An Imperial courier will bring it to you in person. Your dad will get it, along with a full report of what you did here. Elias's eyes were on fire. He told himself that it was a fever. "Okay," he said. "Okay. I'm still not leaving my post." He said in a soft but clear voice, "I'm not going anywhere until this is done. But I'm open to hearing what you have to say." For the first time in the conversation, a ship from the fleet actually moved 2 hours later, but it didn't move toward the station in a threatening way. It moved slowly and carefully, like a small shuttlecraft that drifted close enough to Level 3's viewport to be seen. It looked great up close. The hull had the same living pattern design as the flagship, with geometric shapes that moved like the surface of water. There were no weapons that could be seen. The channel opened. "I'm sending a medical unit," Valen said. "Not man. It will dock at your second airlock. You don't have to let it in, but it is there." Elias stared at the shuttle. Then he looked at his life support unit, which was making a tired humming sound. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me. It's just a tool. Use it or not." He let the shuttle land. The medical unit inside was unlike anything the human military had. It was about the same size and shape as a suitcase. It was smooth, dark, and warm to the touch in a way that felt almost like it was alive. Elias felt something happen that he couldn't put into words when he was able to slowly attach it to his life support line as the interface told him to. Not exactly pain relief. More like the infection that had been screaming in his side for 5 days suddenly dropped to a whisper. It was like something in his blood was being fixed slowly and carefully, like tiny, perfectly accurate hands working on cells. After that, he stayed very still for a long time. "That's—" He stopped. The Empress said, "Our medical technology is a little better than yours." There was a tone in her voice, something that might have made a person laugh. 3,000 years of gentle, dry fun. Somewhat, Elias agreed. "You will not fully recover. The damage is bad, and my unit is only able to do so much. But you have more time now than you did an hour ago." He didn't say thanks again. He thought she didn't want that. So he told her, Tell me about the first stellar throne. A pause. Why? Because it's your home, he said simply. And you've been away from it for a long time. And I'm in it. I guess the least I can do is find out what it is. The quiet went on and on. After that, she started to talk. When she talked about it, her voice changed. The weight was still there, but it felt different. Not the weight of being in charge or living forever. Something from the past. A tone that was exactly at the intersection of grief and love, and couldn't quite decide which it was. It sounded a lot like how his father had talked about the house he grew up in, which had been torn down years ago and left a vacant lot in Cincinnati. She told him that the first stellar throne had been built when she was still learning how to rule in the early years of her empire, before the victories in battle, before the growth in the farthest reaches, before the centuries turned her into something the universe didn't want to be around. It was the first real home she had ever owned. She hadn't inherited it or conquered it. She had built it just for her to think, create, and rule with something close to joy. It had gardens, she said, and her voice was very quiet when she said that. Gardens that live in the air bubble. We cultivated things that are no longer found elsewhere in the galaxy. Flowers and colors you've never seen before. Scents that could make you think, for a moment, that you had forgotten something beautiful and just remembered it. Elias looked around level 3. The station that was frozen. The dark hallways. The picture of Linda, Ross's kids. I'm sorry, he said, that it turned out this way. You didn't do it. My people did. She said, your people didn't know what they were building on. And they made it because they had to, because they were trying to stay alive in a very big, very cold universe that doesn't care much about them. She stopped. I know how to stay alive. For 3,000 years, I have been alive. Elias asked, is that all there is? Living. A long time without sound. Finally, she said, no, not all of them. This is also, I didn't expect to have talks like this. Things that catch me off guard. That makes me remember that the universe is still bigger than what I've drawn. Talking to dying soldiers on stations that are falling apart. Exactly. A pause that held something fragile. Talking to Elias Thorne. Elias's fever rose on the second day of the standoff. It could still be called a standoff, which it was becoming less and less like. It happened quickly. He was at the beacon console, doing his 4-hour check 1 minute, and the Nexus vision was white at the edges, and the panel in front of him was tilting. He grabbed the edge of the console, breathed, counted. The Imperial Medical Unit did something in response. He could feel it, that cellular level of tension sharpening. But the fever was so high that for almost 20 minutes, he wasn't sure what was real. He thought he was in the aluminum boat on the lake in Tennessee. He thought his dad was sitting in front of him. He thought the fleet outside the viewport was just clouds. Then it went away, like a fever spike, leaving him cold, clear, and tired on the floor of level 3, with his cheek against the metal and looking up at the beacon console. The signal is stable. He almost laughed. He got up, slowly. It hurt all over, but in a different way than before. The pain from the infection was quieter, and something else, something that hurt deep in my bones, had taken its place. Not really pain. It felt more like being really, really tired in a way that sleep couldn't help. His body was beginning to get the math. He opened the channel. I went down for a while, he said. I know. Her voice came right away. She had been watching. I was about to give the go-ahead for a physical intervention. I'm awake. You shouldn't be. Probably not. He got the console and ran the check, made a note of the report, then sat down on a cot with a lot of weight. Empress, may I ask you something personal? Yes, you may. In 3,000 years, has anyone ever, he looked for the right words, has anyone ever been important to you? Like for me, not as a soldier, enemy, or subject, as a person. The silence lasted the longest. Yes, she finally said. A few, very few. They were, she stopped for a moment. The problem with living forever, Elias, isn't being alone. It's the math. You meet someone who is amazing. You always know that they will be gone before you finish learning them. You have a choice then. You can stay away and protect yourself from the loss. Or you can know them completely, knowing the sadness is coming. Which one do you do? I have, she said slowly, done both at different times, in different centuries. Which one is better? Another long pause. Knowing them, she said softly, it's worse than the grief, but it's better to know them. Elias was quiet. I'm going to leave soon, he said, not in a big way. He would say that the beacon was at 87%, which is just a fact. Yes, I know that. And you're still talking to me. Yes. So you want to get to know me. A pause. I seem to be, she said. He nodded to himself in the quiet room. Okay, he said. I also want to know you. Elias made a choice on the third day in the morning. He opened the channel and said, Empress, Elias, I want to officially hand over the navigation beacon to your fleet systems. He said it clearly and firmly, just like he had been taught to do when giving reports. There was no waffling or apologizing. Your navigation system is better. This beacon's job is to make sure that Sector 7 is safe to pass through. Your system will do a better job of that than mine. The transfer of the beacon's function to Imperial navigation is what I asked for. A pause. Are you sure? She asked. Yes, he said, taking a breath. I would also like to officially ask, through the official Imperial communication log, that I be allowed to stay at my post for as long as I have to. Out of courtesy, I'm not telling you to wait to reclaim. Please let me stand my last watch here. This time, the silence felt huge. When she talked, he heard something in her voice that he had never heard before. It was something raw and exact at the same time, like a frequency that had been locked away and was now being released very carefully. Corporal Elias Ray Thorne, she said in a formal tone, I acknowledge that I have carried out your orders by Imperial authority. Imperial custody of Meridian 7's navigational beacon will begin right away. Your post is now officially finished. She stopped for a moment, and by my own power, as Empress Valen, sovereign of the outer reaches, I ask that you stay at your post as my guest, not as a soldier, as someone whose presence I have found to be, another pause, important. Elias didn't move at all. After that, he said, I agree. The fleet moved for the first time that morning. not in a rude way, not in effect. They moved one ship at a time, spreading out into a wide formation that surrounded the station, not like a siege, but like something else, like a guard of honor. The huge flagship moved until it was directly in front of the Level 3 viewport. When Elias looked out, all he could see was a huge, beautiful hull with its living patterns glowing softly, like a wall that was made to block him, like company. The station's communications came to life with a quiet, steady signal that wasn't tactical or military. Sound of a type the Dominion had what could only be called music, even though it was made up of frequencies that people couldn't fully hear. It moved through the air of Level 3 like something between sound and feeling. Elias sat on his cot and listened to it. He couldn't say why it made him think of the blue sky and the Tennessee lake, or of his father's patient hands working out a tangle. The channel stayed open. They spoke about everything. Nothing at all. She told him about the gardens, the colors, the smells, and the living architecture of the first stellar throne when it was at its best. He told her about Columbus, how he grew up in a small house with a father who fixed engines for a living, a mother who read every book she could find, and a sister who always won every fight. He told her why he had joined the military, not for glory, but because he wanted to do something that mattered, something bigger than himself. "Did you find it?" she asked. "Did you find something that was important?" "Yes," he said. "I believe I did. Not how I thought it would be." "Yes, but—" He told her about Pepper, about the trip to go fishing, about the letter he had started but not finished. She told him the names of the stars she had given them, about the cultures she had seen grow. She had watched friends come and go over the years. "Does it get easier?" he asked. "Are you losing people?" "No," she said. "It changes. You get better at holding it. But it doesn't hurt less." "That's true. I have learned," she said, "that being honest is more important than being comfortable." "Me too," he said. "Yeah, it took me a while." At dawn, Elias Thorne passed away. Or what passed for dawn, when the gas giant kilos caught the light from the distant sun and changed from a bruised purple to a burning amber, filling the Level 3 viewport with something that looked a lot like a sunrise if you were willing to let be one. He was lying on his cot. The Imperial Medical Unit had done everything it could, which was a lot. It had given him days he wouldn't have had otherwise, and those days had been full. But the damage was too deep and too old, and bodies reach a point where even the best technology can only keep a conversation going for a little longer. At the end, he wasn't in pain. That was what the Empress wanted. The channel was clear. It had been open for the last 12 hours without stopping. "Hey," he said. He spoke very softly, very calm. "I'm here," she said. "The beacon's holding. It is... okay." He was quiet for a bit. "Empress." "Valen," she said. "My name is Valen." "Valen." He gave a shot. It seemed right. "Thanks for talking to me." "Thank you for talking to me," she said. "Thanks for not leaving." He almost smiled. "Tell my dad I was okay at the end," he said. "Don't just send the letter. In any way you can, with any words you have, tell him that I was fine, that I wasn't afraid." "I will tell him myself," she said, "that I was at my post. I'll go to Columbus Ohio, and stand in front of Raymond Thorne and tell him that his son was the most amazing person I've met in 3,000 years. I will tell him that his son made an Empress stop and think about what power really means. I will tell him that his son is done with his watch. For a long time, Elias didn't say anything. "That's good," he finally said. He shut his eyes. He heard the Dominion strange, beautiful music fill level 3 like something between sound and memory. Outside the viewport, kilos burned gold in the morning. Empress Valen did not tear down Meridian 7. In the weeks that followed, her own council told her to do it. The station was structurally weak and architecturally simple. It was built by people on top of something much older and more beautiful. The logical thing to do was to get rid of it and start fixing up the first stellar throne, which she had been planning to do for more than 100 years. She said no. Instead, she told the station to stay stable. The panels that were falling apart were fixed, not replaced with Dominion materials. Instead, they were restored with materials that were the same as the originals. They put more pressure on levels 5 and 7. The observation deck was closed off and carefully rebuilt. And on level 3, the beacon console was left alone. The cot was not changed at all. The picture of Linda Ross's kids, the old book of poems, and Jamie Chen's lucky coin were all still there, protected by a field that kept the air still and the temperature steady. The Empress had a plaque made. It was easy, no big speeches or long writing. His name, his rank, and a date. And below that, for words she had picked out herself. He was done with his watch. Over the next few years, the spire became something between a station and a monument. Imperial workers took care of the navigational beacon and the much better Imperial systems. Ships that went through Sector 7 got 2 signals, the Dominion's exact Imperial frequency, and a second signal that was weaker, older, and still broadcasting on Corporal Thorne's original frequency. The Empress kept both of them going. Sometimes she went to level 3 by herself. She sat in the empty room and looked out the window at the place where kilos turned gold at dawn. She thought about a man who had looked at the whole galaxy and told him to stand down. He had said, in the most human way possible, "Not yet. I haven't been officially let go." She remembered the fishing trip, the tangled line, and how patient her father's hands were. She thought about how every civilization she had ever ruled had either been afraid of her, worshipped her, or tried to make a deal with her. How no one had ever just talked to her like a person who might have something worth hearing in 3,000 years. She had met soldiers. She had never met anyone like Elias Thorne before. She decided that was the whole point. You could be the ruler of the galaxy. You could live for thousands of years. You could have power that made stars bend and people bow down. But you might still be surprised. You might still find something new. You could still learn.